If you've ever thought about running portals in your off-road truck, this is the video for you. I've got 4 in here. We're gonna review 8 different portal options, from the cheapest at $1,000 for a set of 4, all the way up to the most expensive at $20,000. Portals are super hot in the United States right now, but I am warning you, these are not for everybody. By the end of this video, you should have all the information that you need in order to make a decision and decide on if these are gonna work for you and your truck. The first portals I wanna talk about are the cheapest. We're gonna start from the cheapest, work our way all the way up to the most expensive. I bought a set of 4 of these for $1,000. I originally saw a set of 4 for like $700 for the 10K portals. These are 12K. We'll get into that here in just a sec. So the 10K portals is what we're gonna start with. You get a 1.92 reduction in the portal box itself, meaning that you've got to spin this side 1.92 times on the input in order to make your tire turn once. So that's a lot of reduction for sure. These are 2-gear portals, meaning that, you know, I'm gonna cut in a little clip right here. You can see what I'm talking about as I'm explaining it. What that means with a 2-gear portal is that your diffs need to spin the opposite way in order to make sure that if you want to put it in drive and go forward, you actually go forward instead of backwards. A 2-gear portal reverses whatever direction you put into it. So it's not until you get to a 3 or a 4-gear portal where you're gonna be able to slap those on your current axles or your current differentials and continue to drive forward instead of backwards. So the remedy for this, there's all kinds of stuff that you'll see people do online, where I've seen people take old Toyota rear axles and flip them upside down and use them in a front-end application in order to reverse the rotation to where this will then be spinning the way that you want it to. There's lots of little tricks like that, or if you're like me and you're interested in building an IFS rig, you could just use the diffs that came in the Hummers because those are already built to rotate the wrong way. So there are definitely, this is a very cheap option, but there are definitely a lot of things that you're gonna have to overcome in order to make these work on your average off-road truck. The size of the input on the 10K portal is 27 spline. These all were IFS IRS rigs. There's no straight axle rig. But if you go on eBay and you type in Hummer portal, there's quite a few, I shouldn't say quite a few, there's a couple options out there for companies that make inner Cs that will bolt onto this. And then you have to weld it onto your own axle, of course. And then some different other things to like convert your brakes and whatnot. So you can take this from, even though it's an IFS portal, you can convert it over to be a straight axle portal. And those kits are usually like $4 or $5 grand. Another resource is Jesse Haynes Fabrication. They do have a bunch of different stuff listed on their website as different aftermarket options to add to these to make these work on whatever it is you're building. Either 4 1/4 or 4.5 inches between the input and the output. So that's gonna raise your diff up 4.5 inches, which is awesome. It's the whole reason that we're all interested in portals. The 12K portal, which is what this is an upgraded version of the 10K. Apparently you can put the 12K gears in the 10K. So what I mean by that is that all the Hummers that were 12,100 GVW and over, well, I shouldn't say and over, 12,100 GVW specifically, have helical cut gears. Every resource I found online states that they are stronger physically than the 10K, and so that's why people will upgrade. They put these gears in the 10K portal box. It's a 31 spline input instead of 27 spline input. And I don't know which Hummers came with CTIS and which ones didn't, but all of them have those options available. So do your research. Actually, if you're a Hummer portal aficionado, let me know. Which ones came with CTIS? I don't think it's all of them. I don't see, this one might have CTIS. I don't know enough yet. We're gonna be building a Jeep with this later this year, and I'm gonna be learning a lot more about the Hummer portals, but now at least you know as much as I do. The weakness of this, you know, they're relatively small and compact. They're cheap, which is awesome. There's Hummers everywhere, which is awesome. You know, there are so many military units out there, but the gears apparently get stripped. And this is mixed information that I'm finding on forums. So I've seen guys that say they're dropping like huge, like 700 horse big blocks into their Hummers, and their portal boxes are holding up just fine, or their portal gears rather. And then I'm seeing other people that don't have anything close to that much power, and they say they're breaking them. So it's all used military parts. It's probably gonna depend on how the people treated the Hummer before you cannibalize the parts and try to make it fit on your rig. The next cheapest option you're probably gonna find is the Unimog 404, and these are about $5,000 a set. We're gonna talk about two different Unimogs because it's the two most common Unimog portals that I see here in the United States. The 404, which is what I have in my Samurai, and the 416, which is what my buddy John Martinson has. Shout out John. And the difference is strength and style. It's amazing how different they are. With the 404s, they're all drum brake. They're basically all the same ratios from what I can find online. And they all have these big, ugly torque tubes and center diffs, which is just not fun. The 416s will come with disc brake, which is nice. Not all of them, but some of them do. They do still have torque tubes and whatnot, but from what I understand, the 416s are way stronger than a 404. The the Unimog 404 stuff is approximately as strong as like a Dana 60. So if you would be willing to do fill in the blank with a Dana 60, you should be able to get away with the same fill in the blank with the Unimog 404. The difference between the input and the output is about 6 inches. So you're gonna be 6-inch lift before you even start talking about suspension. That for me and my Samurai, which is what I have these installed in, is great on big rocks. Amazing. If you like to crawl stupid slow with a manual transmission, these are geared ultra low and they have a lot of clearance. But if you're gonna try to build something low slung, starting with a 6-inch lift, which is the most out of all the portals we're gonna talk about today, is gonna make it tough to then package suspension on top of that if you wanna keep your rig nice and low. So just something to keep in mind. The reduction of the portal box itself is 2.13 to 1 in the 404, and it's 2.077 in the 416. They're 2-gear portals just like the Hummer, so they spin the opposite way, and that makes it difficult if you want to build your own center section, but not impossible. People do it all the time. You just use like a rear end application in the front or just figure something out to make it turn the correct way. The big weakness in these is the portal cover, which is underneath this big drum brake, so you can't see it. But basically what happens is if you put too much power into this thing or if you put too much tire on this thing, then the portal cover itself will like balloon out. It's cast. So there are 2 companies that make a billet cover. You just buy one of those. That's what I did for my Samurai. Once you install those, you're good to go. From the people that I talk to who I really value their opinions, they say that these are extremely strong axles once you put that billet cover on there. So that to me is, you know, that it's worth doing. For peace of mind if you're gonna beat on your project like really, really hard.
The next portal on the list, if I'm assuming value, is the Volvo C304. I've never seen a set of these for sale, but I know back in the day they were used on many different off-road projects. You're gonna get a 2.06 to 1 reduction. In the portal, you're gonna get 4.5 inches of lift. They're 2-gear portals, and they have a vacuum locker stock. I don't know the weaknesses. I don't know the cost. I've never seen a set of these for sale on Craigslist or on Marketplace where I live or anything like that. I don't think I've ever even seen them at a swap meet. So this is not something that's common where I live. If you have any more information on these, just let us know in the comments. So now we're moving into aftermarket portals. None of these are used anymore. And we're looking at TRE first. This is a company that, from what I can tell, they're out of Malaysia. It's $12,281 USD. And I don't know if there are tariffs on top of that. I'm not sure if this advertised cost includes any sort of tariffs or shipping, or, I mean, I imagine shipping's not included in that. Anyway, you're looking at 4.5-inch lift with these portals. The ratios go from 16%, 25%, 27%, and 36% reduction, which is pretty cool to have all those options. However, these portals advertise that you will get a 6.9-inch per side width increase, or all the way up to a 7.8-inch per side, meaning that you could have, if you bolted these on in the right scenario, you would be 16 inches wider than stock, wheel mount surface to wheel mount surface, with these portals, as far as the way they have them advertised on the website. They do appear to come with brakes, but I couldn't find any verification on that. And they have a lot of different applications, which is nice, and they are 3-gear. So since they're 3-gear portals, we're now moving into portals that don't spin the opposite way of the input that goes into them. There's an idler gear in there that makes it to where if you bolt these on the application that is listed on their website, it's going to, if you put it in drive, it's going to drive forward. It will not go in reverse on you. For $13,500, you can get Jesse Haynes Fab portals, and this is a company that's been around for a long time. I remember learning about these guys on Extreme 4x4 like 15 years ago, no joke, on TV. So they've been around for a long time. I don't know how long they've been doing their portals because the website does have the word new, but I have no idea if that's updated or not. The material is nodular iron. The kits include everything to build 2 steer axles, so this is perfect for those of you that want to build a slow crawling a buggy with rear steer. They include portal hubs, brakes, steering arm, inner C's, kingpins, and bushings, and I'm sure it's going to have gears and all that other stuff. They do come with brakes, and they're loosely based on the Hummer portals. I say loosely just because I don't know how much. They look extremely similar, but they're clearly proprietary to the Jesse Haynes Fabrication Company, just based on like the way the casting looks and everything like that. And just like the Hummer portals, these are 1.92 to 1. So this is heavy fab, no ABS. This is rock crawler stuff. This is not for a modern JK or Toyota Tacoma or something like that. For $14,000 USD, you're looking at Werewolf portals out of Ukraine. And this is a company that's gained popularity in the US over the last few years. 14 grand is like for the Jeep JK application. The prices will vary a little bit depending on the application. I just picked like a super common one. I figured the JK, they made more JKs than all other Jeeps combined, so it seemed like it was a good place to start. 35% reduction, 5.1 inches of lift, and plus 4 inches per corner, meaning that your front axle or rear axle is now going to be 8 inches wider than stock, wheel mount surface to wheel mount surface. These are 4-gear portals, which is great. So you're going to have 2 idler gears instead of just 1 idler gear. So it's the same thing as the 3-gear portals as far as directionally, but I think that you're probably going to have a stronger portal connection if it's going through 2 idler gears instead of just 1, especially if you're someone who has a heavy foot and a lot of power. The website says that these kits have rear brakes, at least for the JK, not clear on front brakes. I'm assuming if it's not listing front brakes, you're probably reusing yours. And then I don't know if it has aftermarket ABS sensor or if you're going to use your stock one. And this, to me, if you were going to buy these, I would definitely get that answer. Because if you're using your stock ABS sensor, no problem. If you have an ABS sensor go out, you can go get a replacement. But if this is from Werewolf and it's like a proprietary sensor, I would definitely buy a couple so that you don't, that this investment doesn't blow up in your face later when you can't find an ABS sensor for it. I did contact a company out of Canada that's a dealer called The Gear Shop, and The Gear Shop told me that these portals use SKF bearings. That's one of the questions that I asked specifically because this is going to have to be serviced at some point. So where do I get the parts? If they're SKF bearings, then that means this is off-the-shelf stuff, which is really good news for those of us that like to fix our own stuff. 8 bolts are holding the 2 case halves together, it's 8 bolts for the TREs as well. I forgot to mention that. As far as what I can tell in the pictures, I think this is important because the more bolts that you have going through aluminum, the stronger it's going to be. So from here on out, I'm going to list how many bolts I'm seeing holding the 2 case halves together, because not only is this going to dictate probably the amount of deflection between the 2 halves, which is going to influence the life of the gears, but it's also going to dictate whether or not, you put a ton of power and huge tires on this thing. Is it going to rip out because, you've got a steel bolt into a piece of aluminum? Also worth mentioning that they do list that they have CTIS availability on the Werewolf portals, which to me is awesome. I think anything with CTIS is great. For $14,999 to $22,999, you can go through Tibus USA, and they have quite a few applications. I did text them to find out some of these other specs that aren't listed on the website. You're going to get 5 inches of lift and about 5 inches of width per each side. So you're going to gain 10 inches per axle overall. These are 22% reduction. They're billet and they're 3-gear portals. So you're going to get the same advantages of a 4-gear portal in the fact that it will reverse that rotation back to the way you want it to be if you're slapping these on a Jeep or something. But they're not going to be as strong as a 4-gear portal. I can't be sure if these include brakes in the price that you're seeing. It's not clear on the website, and it's not clear on the ABS components either. I don't know if you're going to be reusing your factory ABS with the toner ring that's in their portal box, or if you're going to have to use a proprietary one from them. That's definitely something I would recommend you ask. These are being held together, the 2 portal halves, by 8 bolts, just like the other ones we've been talking about.
At $15,000, Portal Pros is the next one on the list. And this is one we actually have on hand, which I'm very thankful. Thank you, Portal Pros, for sending this to us. You might not have heard of Portal Pros because they're just getting up and going. I met these guys at King of the Hammers last year, and I really like their design and what they had to say. So they're going to start delivering these between April and May of 2025 for their early adopters. And I think that they have a lot of value for the price point. So it's $15K. The reduction is 25%. So, I mean, I'd say 25% is going to be like around what most people would want. If you're trying to throw something on your Tacoma, throw something on your JK, throw something on your JT, whatever the situation may be. Because if you're increasing your tire size by 25%, which would, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, 30 to a 37, would that be 25%? I'm not sure, I'm not an engineer, but in any case, if you increase it 25% and then you increase your gearing 25%, then you're not gonna, in theory, you won't have to re-gear your diffs, which is really nice. So you save that $4,000 re-gear if you're paying someone to do it, and then you put that down on $15,000 Portal, you're only looking at $11K, plus you get the benefits of lifting it without having to buy a lift kit. So now save on that lift. This is a price point that I think is very competitive, and because of the way that they're setting these up, I think that this is going to make sense for a lot of people. As crazy as that sounds, I know 15 grand is a lot of money for people. It's a lot of money for me. In fact, when I bought the 74 weld portals, I sold a whole truck just so I could buy them. But I do think that this is in a price point that is going to be very accessible for people. These are non-unit bearing. So again, if you're budget minded, non-unit bearing is going to be more time consuming, but non-unit bearing is going to be less money. So the 74 weld is a proprietary bearing you only get through 74 weld. So it's a unit bearing, meaning that like 4 bolts, you change the whole hub out like that. It's going to be extremely fast if you're a race team and you have a hub go bad. And these are also crazy beefy hubs. I don't think that this is going to be an issue that most people have, is like having these go bad, but everything fails eventually, right? So when it fails, can you just go down to the parts store and get a set of bearings and throw them in this? Or do you need to call the one source that you can get the bearing from? There's pros and cons to both, genuinely. Honestly, I'm a unit bearing guy. I prefer a unit bearing. But if you're somebody who wants to be able to just go and get the bearings yourself and repair this thing, you're gonna save a lot of money if you just, and also I did confirm, I talked to them about what brand of bearings they're using and have they had any bearings like custom made to where you can only get them through Portal Pros. They said no, everything is off the shelf. So now how easy are they to find? I don't know, but they're things that are made by major companies like SKF. The case halves are being held together by 10 bolts, which I think is important. The other portals that we've talked about up until now, the aftermarket ones, are held together by 8. I don't know if that'll be a problem, but it's one of the questions that I was specifically trying to answer, because when I look at a big unit like this, and I know that people are gonna put these on like 392 Jeeps and things with big power, I'm looking at like, well, how much deflection is this aluminum case gonna see, and how well is it gonna be held together with only 8 bolts? Well, I like the fact that it's 10. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how many you would really need in order to satisfy the amount of deflection. Also, satisfy the fact that we're threading steel bolts into an aluminum housing. You want to have as many threads as you possibly can grip into. So I think that 10 bolts is good. It's more than like what I would say the industry standard is by looking at the other stuff on the market. Also, this being a 4-gear portal instead of a 3-gear, I think is a huge advantage. A 3-gear portal will reverse rotation to where you can bolt a portal box onto whatever your build is, but it's also going to make it to where you only have one idler gear in between those 2 gears to reverse that rotation. With a 4-gear portal like you get here in Portal Pros or with 74 weld, having 2 idler gears, not being an engineer, I see that being a benefit to people who are going to run big power or run like humongous tires and are going to be putting a lot of twisting force between those gear sets. This is the only one on the market that I could find with a 40 spline stub, so that's huge. And these have the ability, they're working on CTIS inflation systems. So they're gonna come machined for the people who are initially investing in this product. They're gonna come machined for it, and this is a system that they're gonna work through, and then they're gonna deliver later on down the road. And I think CTIS is super cool. Honestly, most people don't need it, but for me being a snow wheeler, I'd love to be able to air up and down inside my cozy cab instead of having to get out and stand in the snow or the blizzard, just like trying to air up tire by tire. This is the most expensive portal box on this table, but the prices are very similar to what you're gonna find from Tibus. The difference is this is a 4-gear portal, that's a 3-gear portal, and to be crystal clear, I bought this with my own money. I sold an 80 series Land Cruiser that I really liked so that I could buy portals for my Tacoma. What inspired this video from the get-go was the fact that I did a ton of research on portals and bought these and was like, you know, there's not a video that really breaks down a lot of this information, so at least I can get you guys started down the same rabbit holes that I went, and then you can decide what's gonna work best for you. With what I do with my Tacoma and the way this integrates into the Marlin Crawler RCLT kit, the suspension kit that I have in that Tacoma, this was like the only option on the market, and as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, here's the specs. 3.88 inch lift, and if you're a plumber like me, you put a tape on it. It looks like 4 inches, but if you're an engineer, it's 3.88. 22% reduction, which once again is gonna get you into that same ballpark as these guys, where if you've got something stock, you wanna put a 37 on it, you wanna lift it, this is gonna be able to handle your gearing, your lift, and the lift is gonna come from or it's gonna go underneath your axle. So there's a lot of value in something like this. This kit is $20,000, but it does come with 4-wheel disc brakes, which is nice for me because my Tacoma, my 21 Tacoma, believe it or not, has drum brakes in the rear. So I'm gonna get a brake upgrade in the rear, which is killer. And then also, whenever you add a portal to a semi-float rear axle, like what I have in the Tacoma, you are now converting it to a full float. So those 35 spline shafts that I have in the Ford 9-inch that I put in the back of that Tacoma are now gonna be full float Ford 9-inch. It's gonna be such a strong unit with these portals on it. The bearings and seals can all be bought off Amazon. So Quinn said that he purposely used common bearings and seals for this. The only exception, of course, is the unit bearing, which you're gonna have to buy directly from 74 Weld. However, I don't know, maybe with a little bit of playing around, it does look like the unit bearing off of a Ford Super Duty. I don't know if there's differences the way it's made or any of that, but geez, does it look similar. 12 bolts hold the thing together, which is the most out of anybody else that I researched. And again, I mean, even if you talk to the owner, he would probably say that it could be overkill. But considering the fact that these guys have done more R&D than probably anybody else in the industry with King of Hammers, Ultra 4, I would say that whatever modifications they make to their box is probably for a reason. So I'm not an engineer. I can't judge based on my engineering knowledge, but I can judge based on the fact that I've seen them in the industry for so long and I know that they have done the R&D. And the reason they can do that is because they're an aerospace company where they just also like off-road. So they have the ability to machine all this stuff in-house. Another reason I was willing to invest the money, because I know that a ton of this stuff is being made by them because they can buy the $10 million crazy mill thing that normal people like us haven't even heard of because they're using it in aerospace. But now, since they have it for aerospace, they can also develop cool portal stuff for guys like us. So those are the reasons why I invested the money in this company. Also, I did talk to him about CTIS because I desperately want to be able to air up and down from inside the cab. And Quinn said that they are working on a CTIS system, so maybe that's an upgrade that I can do to these later on down the road. I want to end this video with all the cons before I lose my voice. This is a lot of talking for me. There's a lot of cons to having portals, and it's a lot of stuff that I don't see brought up online. Obviously, cost and weight are two things that everyone knows. There's gonna be a loss of horsepower and efficiency. If this is your daily and you want to get the best mileage, portals might not be the best option. I could see a world where with the right gearing, so you have like an 8-speed transmission and all that modern tech and all this stuff, where it might not make a difference. But it's something worth considering. I'm actually gonna do a future video where we're gonna dyno my Tacoma on 40s, then we're gonna put the portals on the same 40s, dyno it again. We're gonna see how much horsepower we lose, because I would bet we lose 10% minimum horsepower through those portal boxes. But you also gain some torque transfer, which is really nice when you're a guy like me likes to crawl slow. Anyway, leverage. The portal is offset. So where your tire turns is now offset to where the center of the axle is. So that's gonna give that tire more leverage against your suspension components and the way that they relate to the axle. That could make your suspension handle different. It's definitely gonna put different twisting forces on things, and it's gonna increase the amount of influence that tire has on everything behind it, right? So it's something worth considering. Also, Maintenance. Every single one of these things is its own little gearbox. Every single one of them is gonna have a vent. Every single one of them is gonna have its own oil. So you're gonna have to change the oil in each one of these boxes individually. And I don't know what the manufacturer's recommendations are. They're probably gonna vary super widely. Personally, I'm gonna change mine every 3,000 miles, or like whenever I change the oil in my Tacoma, unless I go through water. Every single time I go through water, I will be changing the oil in these portal boxes, which is gonna suck. But the reality is, a tiny little failed seal that you don't know has failed, allowing water to get into that box could just wreak, we're talking about an insane catastrophic failure. And you don't want that to happen going down the freeway or anything like that. So the maintenance, it's an extra pain that you're gonna have to deal with. Know-how. I wouldn't recommend these for people that don't wrench on their own vehicles. I know that what's funny about these is like the $20,000 price tag is gonna put the 74 weld portals specifically into a price point where it's gonna be like tech sector, people who probably don't work with their hands that are gonna be able to afford them. But the inverse of that is that if you're somebody who is in the tech sector, you wanna buy these because of all the reasons we all want them. If you want to take that 4Runner to Alaska and you have an issue, you're not going to find someone to work on it. It's up to you. You will only get that 4Runner back to civilization because of you. Not only are you're not going to find a mechanic that wants to touch it, you're not going to find very many mechanics that know what a portal is. A lot of mechanics are familiar with cars and they're familiar with like light truck stuff. Your average mechanic in America is not familiar with portals or has ever put their hands on one. So that's something I think you should consider. Do you have what it's gonna take to fix this thing if it's locked up on Hell's Revenge in Moab? Now, if you're gonna be traveling close to home and the shop that put the portals on has no problem fixing it or coming out and saving you, that's a different thing. But I'm sure you can hear what I'm saying. There's a certain level of responsibility that comes with owning these, and if you don't have the basic know-how or tools or understanding how to fix this stuff, it's probably is not the product for you. This is like high performance stuff that we're playing with here. And then the last one is, of course, scrub radius. And that's just, when you widen something out, it's gonna be harder on your steering, it's gonna be harder on ball joints, it's gonna be harder on tires, all that. So this is all stuff that you should consider before you go out and purchase something like this. If none of this stuff bothers you, portals are amazing. My Samurai is a monster because it has portals on it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you got something out of it, and do your research. Also, if you're an expert at Volvo portals or Unimog portals, or if I misspeak in any way, please put it in the comments. I'm not pretending to be an expert. I'm just sharing the stuff that I found online, and hopefully most of it is correct. So do your own research, and I hope you enjoyed the video.